Sup guys, and welcome back to Doctor Who Discussions. My name is Charlie.
And my name is Russell.
And today we're going to be discussing The Lie of the Land. The lie being that there was any effort put into this episode.
Much like the effort put into that joke.
They didn't put any effort in, neither do I.
Right.
This episode sucks.
Yeah.
This episode is terrible.
Yeah.
The weird thing is, as we were discussing while we were watching this,
we noticed like there were a lot of really good scenes.
This episode had the most really good scenes of the entire of this
trilogy,
three-parter, but it's also where the entire plot falls apart.
Yeah, it's in a lot of ways. I compared it to The Wedding of River Song, which is, for a long time is like my least favourite episode of Doctor Who ever.
Until Hellbent came along, but we don't discuss that one.
I mean, I'm more angry at Listen, but Hellbent is also pretty bad. But
yeah.
Like it's even rather similar in structure, where you've got like this really interesting premise that you open on, 20 minutes of really good character development for our main hero. In this case, it's Bill rather than the 11th Doctor, and then you have a really emotional scene leading up to the Doctor being shot, and then there's a joke, and then the rest of the episode is flipping dreadful. I'm trying very carefully to watch my language here. With even with scenes where the Doctor's acting out of character and giggling like a maniac,
while potentially hurting many people.
Yeah,
it just takes a complete nosedive.
Yeah. So the intro for this was really strong. Like
it's really good.
The first half, up until
the fake regen,
up until the fake regeneration, is really good. So you have like this really ridiculous premise where the monks have basically reappropriated history. Like they basically slapped their faces on everything. Like the Mona Lisa, they superimpose themselves in the background of like the moon landing and Thomas Edison inventing the light bulb. And it's very clear it's supposed to be a fake news allegory, because who would be so crazy enough to believe this, right, guys? The Earth has always been flat. And you also get the obligatory dictatorship where somebody's dragged off to a concentration camp. The usual 1984 stuff.
But here's where our first big issue with the episode comes in. Somebody gets dragged off to a concentration camp, and that sucks. That's bad. That's very bad. But why are they being dragged off?
Because allegedly, the reason they give is she has information contradictory to the quote unquote real history. Okay, yeah, that's kind of thought police, I guess. But on the whole, what are the monks doing with Earth?
They are taking credit for history, which is bad, and they are putting people in concentration camps for undisclosed crimes, which is bad. But other than that, what's different?
Yeah, how is Earth getting on day by day? We never see this because we had this discussion okay, from what we've seen, they're not like a fascist dictatorship, and the Doctor gives an argument later on they're creating peace, they're guiding the humans through, trying not to cause another world war.
Which, if that's what they're doing, fantastic.
Fine, yeah, the Doctor's got a point. Okay.
And if that's what they're doing, why do people have an issue? And even if people have an issue with, okay, but they're erasing our history, but if that's what they're doing, if they're genuinely helping, why do they need to erase history? Why do they need to change history if people are genuinely happy? And if they're not happy, then...
And on top of that, after this discussion, maybe the monks are doing good, but we don't see any evidence of them doing good either. We don't know what they're doing.
There is absolutely zero indication of what is different about life under the monks. With the grace, the aesthetic of the episode, everyone, the streets looking, trashed and with litter everywhere and everything, everyone with some clothes and being a very grayscale thing and big statues of the villain everywhere. It's very clearly trying to ape the iconography of Last of the Time Lords, which is great because Last of the Time Lords was great, Jesus Doctor notwithstanding.
Yeah.
But in that, we saw what the Master was doing. The Master was outright, forcing people to build massive weapons. It established that Japan
was completely wiped out.
Yeah, they rebelled against him and they completely wiped him out. His first
act in, upon gaining power in Sound of Drums is wipe out 1/10 of the human population,
For no reason other than for fun. And it's outright shown that the Toctafane were constantly killing people just for fun. And the Master not only didn't stop it, but outright encouraged it. People were hiding in buildings. The streets were barren. we actually saw that the Master's rule was oppressive and hurting people, whereas here, we don't see what's so bad about the monks' rule, apart from they put a person in a concentration camp for no reason that we're given.
I mean, they mention later on, like, oh, they put another person in a concentration camp because they had a certain comic book. Okay.
But why?
What was wrong with that? Like I joked like after we saw that, I was like, wait, was it Marvel or DC? Because that's probably the only reason why they probably chucked somebody in a concentration camp.
Joke's on them. It was an early Image comic. They deserved to be in that camp.
1,000,000 years dungeon.
This is the problem. We don't see what's so bad about the monk's rule, and we're given no indication of it apart from here's some fascist iconography that everyone will be familiar with. Hopefully that's enough to make you hate the monks. Yes, it's bad. Like, even the Doctor admits it's bad that they're reappropriating human history, but if they're genuinely creating peace, then it's a fair trade-off. And if they're not creating peace, then why are people accepting them and not rebelling against them? And if they are creating peace, why do they need to change history in the first place if they're doing good? Nothing about this premise makes sense because
nothing is explained.
They're so busy trying to paint the monks as oppressive that they forget to mention why the monks need to be oppressive and why people are accepting the oppression.
Like, even if they just had one throwaway line in there that, I don't know, maybe they're just building up like a force of humans to help them take over other planets. There you go. It's not original. It's not all that interesting to begin with, but it's something. It's something that Doctor Who has done 1 billion times, but it's a reason for us to dislike our villains.
And they do establish that, the reason that they changed the history was if people think this is always how it's been, then they will accept it. But
that's only because they've pretty much inserted themselves into people's minds.
But again, why did they need to?
They could have just said, like, oh, the monks were just allies to humans all the time. Or, do what, they even had a set up from the last episode where they said the entire world is going to be destroyed unless you ask for our help. Why not just say, rather than have that whole thing being the stuff in the lab that was going on, why not just say there's an alien invasion coming from more oppressive aliens than us? We're going to help. And then have that whole thing turn out to be a lie. There are no other alien invaders coming. They're just setting up a totalitarian state and using the fear to keep them in line.
But even if they did use the lab stuff, you could just use that as the excuse in the episode. Everyone loves them because they saved the world from the disease that was going to kill everybody.
Yeah.
Like, they engineered a conflict when you already had a perfectly decent conflict and then failed to give any explanation as to why this new conflict actually makes any sense.
And on top of that, sorry, the dog's just cuddling up to my leg now.
Yeah, forgive any background noises. We have the dog in the room for this episode.
Aww. I mean, we're going to be barking this whole time anyway, so...
Well, the writers were clearly barking mad when they wrote this.
It's a shame because I like Toby Whithouse.
And that's our terrible joke for the episode. We'll see you again next time. That's jokes. Everything we say on the show is terrible.
Yeah. But... I've completely forgotten what I'm going to say now. The monks. Not only does their plan make no sense in this, but they've kind of been rendered from... We might have mentioned this in Pyramid at the End of the World. It's been a while since we've done a recording, believe it or not.
We're not very punctual when we do these.
No.
Oh, really?
But they're pretty much reduced from these omnipotent figures in the first 2 episodes to... just really incompetent.
Like, in the second one, they could sense people's ulterior motives just by looking at them, whereas in this one, a monk walks onto a ship full of allies of the Doctor, outright planning to betray and subvert them, and do nothing.
It just sort of walks in, looks at Bill, and he walks out before going, I was your conflict for the first half of this episode.
Yeah.
Ta-ta!
Why was that even a thing? Was it just trying to ramp up tension because it didn't work?
I mean, I guess the only reason why it sort of looked at Bill and just decided to clear off afterwards was because it knows that Bill is the linchpin.
Probably. I mean, he did explain how Bill escaped and why Bill wasn't killed, which, okay, that was clever.
And I guess it kind of makes sense why she's the one who remembers, because, again, she's the one person on Earth who let this happen. But also, even then, with the linchpin stuff, even then, Missy then talks about, the fact that she knows how the linchpin works. The fact that if they kill the biological line of the Lichpin, like say like Bill or any of her kids, who she's probably not going to have anyway because lesbian.
They really didn't think this episode through, did they?
Yeah, just wait it out for the next 50 years. Missy knows that if they kill the Lichpin or their latest descendant, that's it. The monks are done. They're finished. Their hold over the planet is gone. But the monks don't know that. Despite having done this to thousands of other worlds, and they just chalk it up to experience.
And also that gets retconned later in the actual episode, where killing her actually isn't going to solve everything. They just need to make her brain dead.
Which doesn't really make a difference. Like, if Missy says, like, oh, you don't need to be dead, you just need to be brain dead. I mean, one kind of implies the other.
Yeah.
It's not like... it's not like in Metal Gear Solid 4 where Solidus survives. He gets his spine cut in the second game, and it turns out he's still alive. Except it's only his internal organs, not his brain. That's the only thing. Like when they said let's kill Bill, I've already made a Kill Bill joke. When they said let's kill Bill, I don't think Missy meant just disable her just disable her nervous system. No, kill Bill, disintegrate her. Kill her, push her into a volcano.
We will say though,
like you did to that poor little girl.
We will say, the scene where they're talking to the mistress in the vault, that is probably Missy's best scene.
Oh, absolutely. I've never really been a big fan of Missy. Not because woman master. In fact, Michelle Gomez as the master, I sort of keep saying perfect casting. Absolutely perfect casting for a female master. It's just that they keep writing her as crazy. And I think the only reason why I can stand her now is because it's the one episode where she's not written by Moffat.
Yeah. Although Moffat probably had a hand in writing this episode, but we don't know how much. And let's blame Whithouse for this one because he was the main writer.
Yeah, I'm still going to blame Moffat because overall, Moffat helps with the first 2 episodes, but then just sort of abandoned Toby at the finish line.
Just kind of, I can't salvage this. Just go ahead and write something. Nobody's going to care.
I mean, like I said last time, the biggest problem with this 3-parter is that it was written by 3 different people, so there was no creative vision across the whole thing.
I get the impression there wasn't a lot of communication between them either.
No, and
because even small things like the way the monks kill people is different in this episode, because in the previous one they touched somebody on the chest and they disintegrated. With this, they have generic lightning powers that unlimited power. I mean, I was going to make a silence joke because given your joke about the wedding of River Song as well,
it seems fitting.
They are very similar to the silence. In fact, I'm not sure why they didn't just use the silence for this, other than the fact that the silence are massively overused.
And even then, they basically got the same plan as the silence.
Take over the world for some reason. Screw with
for
people's
really contrived
memories.
Reason.
Screw with people's memories. Who even knows what's going on?
Yeah, we even discussed this. We can't even remember what the silence is plan in Daredevil. Free cookie for anyone who manages to figure that out in the comments below.
Although actually, I think it was one of the novelizations. It might have been Time of the Doctor or whatever. But somebody made a joke where the silence enacted the plan so complicated that several years later nobody even knows what the end result of the plan was.
And Moffat wrote that book.
It's funny because it's true.
What else was there? There was also the first half with Bill and Nardole. Really good.
Okay, Peter Capaldi, Matt Lucas, and Pearl Mackie needed a better script because they were really good in this episode.
They're wonderful.
They're wonderful in every episode, but they had some really good moments in this episode. As we said earlier, this episode had probably the highest concentration of really good moments of this entire trilogy, but it's just where everything falls apart and nothing makes sense. And
it's the scene where they're talking to the Doctor and he's still keeping up the facade of I'm working for the monks. Pearl is acting her heart out, and I regret being so anxious about her as the new companion because all I had to go on for the year long leading up to the series was that initial clip that they showed in the middle of a football match for some reason, where she was just asking really annoying questions. Pearl is a wonderful actress.
She's brilliant.
I really hope she I don't know if she's gone on to do anything else since.
I think she's done some theatre since. I think I saw her name in a theatre ad at one point.
Yeah, I mean, she was doing a bit of theatre before Doctor Who as well, but I really hope she goes on to do some really good stuff. I hope because I mean, everybody, all the other Moffat era companions have done well. Karen Gillan's going to be well, she's in like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Going to see Infinity War later on. Just getting that out there. You know, Jenna's moved on. She's playing Victoria. I think we're on season 2 or 3 now.
I don't know.
I don't watch it, but no, my mum does. But yeah, I really hope Pearl goes on to get some really good work after this. And Matt Lucas as well. He's been great. Like, I really like Nardole now. And it's a shame because we got these really good actors and these really good characters, and once again, it's the script that lets these people down.
And we've even got this really good concept. But it's the script and the writing that lets us down because nobody seems to know what's going on and nobody seems to care what's going on.
Yeah, and
like, but even directorially, is that a word? I don't care. Like,
excuse me. Go on.
Like, there's some really good scenes in this. Like the scene where they're storming the pyramid and they've got like mostly the silence just punctuated by vague sounds of what's happening, but laid over with Bill's voiceover of everything, and the fact that then like stops when the guy's tape gets shot. That was a really good scene. That was a really well filmed and well put together scene. But again, there were so many logical plot holes in there. Like, this guy's tape gets destroyed. Okay, pick up someone else's.
Or just shout, "Hey, I've lost my tape. What do I do now?" Or, you know, did they have a backup plan for if the tape gets damaged?
I mean, this is just a tiny point, but there's a lot of those, and as we've discussed earlier, nothing about this story makes sense.
And even the resolution, which I know you didn't have so much of a problem with it, but Bill's mum being, you know, the memory of Bill's mum being the thing that saves the world. Okay. I'm okay with, you know, the world being saved by the power of love or whatever. You know, it's not one of my favourite ways to resolve a story, but whatever. But it really doesn't make a huge amount of sense. Like, what about the image of Bill's mum is it that saves the world? Because, I mean, it's a vision of, like, the world without the monks. But it's not really much different to what the Doctor was doing. I mean, they never really sort of adequately explained why it was specifically the image of Bill's mum that was saving the world here.
There's no explanation as to why Bill's mum is better at doing this than, say, the Doctor, who has a much larger, more complex mind. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about Bill being able to do something that the Doctor can't. I'm all for giving the companions more to do and being able to show up the Doctor, but there's no explanation as to why it works when the Doctor's solution didn't, when it was exactly the same.
Yeah, and even then, like, I was just thinking, like, what if when Bill plugged her mind into the machine, you know, it shows, you know, all the adventures she's had with the Doctor, you know, rising up and fighting up against oppression and, you know, saving people and, you know, snakes in the Thames, you know, all these adventures. But again, the Doctor's done all this. So
it was a fish in the Thames.
It's a big snakefish thing.
We had an argument about what the creature was back in our Thin Ice review. Let's not get into that again.
No. I mean, it could be both. It could be...
Let's not start. We'll be here forever.
Okay, hybrid.
How dare!
But it's like... I fail to see how the Doctor showing across the world this image of peace and all the, you know, all the things that he's done, saving the world, the actual history. Actually, that probably would have been better. Now I think about it, the Doctor doing, you know, showing people the actual history, you know, factually what happened, but then that fails, and Bill comes in, and she does it through emotion. Like, if that makes sense, like. Yeah. You know, like, you know, how she felt watching, you know, the Doctor solve these problems, how it was, what it was like having that decision to save the creature in the Thames, you know, saving all these people, trying to find a way of fixing the problem, as opposed to saying this is how the world really should be. It should have been a call to arms to rise up against your oppressors rather than just reminding people that's not actually the real history.
But as we explained earlier, we don't know how the monks are actually oppressing people.
I mean, apart from just sort of blocking out a portion of their memory. I mean, they're using the statues to block out their memory, but how are people... But the thing is, even then, how are some people able to remember the real history and get sent to the concentration camps anyway?
Everything about this episode just coalesces into a big pile of how.
Yeah. And as a separate point, but going back briefly to Missy, there was she had the speech at the end of her scene where she tells the Doctor, you know, your vision of good is not absolute. You know, basically telling him sometimes in order to make an omelette, you got to crack a few eggs. You got to let some people die. You can't win every time. Which I said to you, like, if this was a finale story, that would have been quite poignant, where Bill had to die.
Like, we had a discussion of this where we don't, like, that is the Doctor's philosophy, and we don't mind that. We like that the Doctor represents hope and being able to save people even in the face of overwhelming odds, but too often it comes at the expense of logic.
And
or good storytelling.
Yeah. But I mean, you did make a point, like, this is being positive now. You know, the Doctor still saves the day through hope, you know, keeping everybody alive. Which
except the people who died to them in the assault on the pyramid. But who cares? They weren't even named characters.
All those people that the Doctor ran over on the pier with his boat. Never cruel or cowardly! Oh, man. Sorry, that moment really annoys me. It annoys me more than the fake regeneration.
That entire scene where you've got this... we discussed this earlier. You had this huge build-up to this massive dramatic moment, and then you've got this scene where they're talking about, we tricked you and we made you think you were going crazy for 6 months, and that's funny, and they're playing like really light jaunty music, and everybody's laughing and pointing at her going, you fell for it, and like, everybody's being so awful. And especially
when you follow that up with like a regeneration. Now, regeneration this is an ongoing problem I've had in more specifically the Capaldi era, but you know, it's a Moffat thing. And the fact that they keep bringing up, you know, fake regenerations, you know, okay, I know I just said Capaldi, but I'm going to use Smith as an example as well. You know, fixing River's arm, or you know, giving Davros a bit of regeneration, sucking the life out of him, constantly joking. Oh, how many regenerations you got left now that you've got that new cycle? And even now here, having a full-on regeneration, and
then it's a fake.
Like, it stops regeneration from feeling special. And I remember somebody talking about this on one of the behind-the-scenes DVDs for I think it was Mordred Undead, the Fifth Doctor serial. A big plot point in that episode is basically, in order to save somebody, the Doctor has to sacrifice his remaining lives, and they have a full-on discussion about, you know, how many lives he's got left and how much he's used them and how regeneration works. And one of the people in the behind the scenes sort of said, looking back, it was probably a bad idea, because when you keep mentioning regeneration, when you keep bringing it up as a normal topic, it kind of sucks the drama out from when the Doctor does regenerate. Like, Case of Androzani was such a big shock because you weren't expecting the Doctor to regenerate at the end. But stuff like the end of time, you know he's going to regenerate anyway, because the whole time he's going, oh, I'm going to die. Yeah, but you can do that thing. And now here constantly going, oh yeah, the Doctor can just regenerate if there's a problem. It kind of ruins that tension. It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like the Doctor's in danger anymore.
They try to fix that when it comes around to the Doctor Falls and Twice Upon a Time, but that's a discussion for later. Yeah. And we'll have words about Twice Upon a Time.
I mean, I will just jumping ahead of myself here. At least they do it somewhat right with that story with the Doctor Falls. I mean, because we knew he was going to go at Christmas, but having the death occur the episode before and having him hold it back, that's quite unique.
That's not something they've done before.
Yeah.
In any case, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
You can see we'd rather be talking about much better episodes.
Because this episode sucks.
Yeah.
Like in the last one, we went on about, we used the word contrived over and over again to explain the episode. Whereas in this one, we're just going to be repeating, this episode sucks over and over again. Because as we've established, nothing about this episode makes sense, and they actively tried. It feels a lot like they actively tried to make it make less sense, and I know that's not the case. But
I mean, it's no Hellbent, but it's still by far the weakest episode of this season.
This episode sucks.
Yeah. And on top of that, even at the ending, where it's revealed people don't remember what happened, which, all right, fine, if you're going to do that.
Again.
Yeah, I mean, Russell did it as well, where like,
Oh.
everybody saw the spaceship crash into Big Ben. Yeah, but the news says it was a hallucination. What?
Far be it for people to learn from their mistakes and actually, have this universe evolve and actually have consequences to society in this story. No, we've got to keep resetting back to the status quo again.
But even then, the Doctor says humanity's doomed to never learn from their mistakes. The thing is, it was Bill's mistake. Bill was the one who, brought the monks. She gave the monks power. But it all worked out in the end because her entire plan was to give the Doctor's sight back so he could stop the monks from taking over.
And he did.
So there's no consequences here.
I mean, Bill did, but she couldn't have done it without the Doctor.
So humanity has to learn from its mistakes that Bill made, which all worked out in the end anyway.
And they're not allowed to learn from their mistakes because they don't remember making the mistakes in the first place.
This entire three-parter could have been so much better, but again, I'm going to blame the fact that you had 3 different people writing 3 different episodes. Like, this doesn't feel like a story where it's got like a beginning, middle, and an end. It feels very much like you've got
3 stories desperately slapped together at the last second with the same villain because we need to connect these.
It feels like it should have been like a full-on season. But they took out like 2 episodes between each of these 3. Like, we've got like episode 1, we've got like the computer simulation. They're coming. And then we skip ahead to, they're here now. We can't prepare for it. Here's the plan, and they've taken over. Skip to 3 episodes later. It's like, okay, things kind of suck, and we're just going to compress 3 episodes into one where we're trying to resolve the issue. It feels like an entire season's worth of story where it's barely making up a quarter of this one. And it feels like this quarter of the season has been wasted a little.
It doesn't feel like they put in nearly as much effort as they should have done. This could have been the centerpiece of the series, a big 3-part story about the takeover of Earth and having to learn from everyone's mistakes. But no, it just felt lazy. This episode sucks.
It's a shame, because I want to see them do more stuff like with 3-parters. I mean, so far we've only had 3, arguably 4 if you count season 4. But, they've all been... Like, season 3's 3-parter was pretty good, but it fell apart at the end, which, you kind of expect out of the finale.
Yeah.
Season 4, you can very tenuously count as a 3-parter.
Sort of.
Even though the first part had really nothing to do with it. It was just sort of leading into a 2-part finale, which, again, fell a bit short at the end.
But up until then, it was good.
Season 9's 3-parter was good for the first 2 episodes.
The first episode was good. The second episode was excellent, and the third episode never happened.
Yeah, the third episode completely forgot that the first 2 existed, or at the very least, the one before it did.
At the very least, it completely forgot the lessons we were supposed to learn from those episodes.
And then this one just felt like there should have been an extra 2 or 3 episodes in between. It's a shame because I wanted to like this.
I wanted to like this. I liked Extremis a lot more than a lot of other people. I really liked that episode.
Looking back, it wasn't really that bad.
The first time, as we mentioned last time, the first time I watched it, I quite liked Pyramid at the End of the World, but the second time it fell apart. And then this one, I just.
It's a shame because it's sort of indicative of like the big problems in Doctor Who, where you've got all these really good actors, these really well written characters for the most part. You've got brilliant set design, you've got really cool ideas, you've got brilliant direction. The effects were kind of a bit rubbish, but I mean, budget cuts. But ultimately, what lets this whole thing down is just the writing. That's been Doctor Who's biggest enemy for years now.
You can dress a story up as fancily as you like, but if the story is not well written, it's not going to be a good story, and this story was not well written.
It's like Doctor Who didn't get by in the 60s because of its production value. Hell, sometimes even the acting wasn't even that good, even from its mains. Don't shoot.
I mean, remember how many times Bill Hartnell flubbed lines and they just went with it?
Yeah.
Because they couldn't afford a retake.
Well, yeah, that was the 60s in general. But it got by from its ideas, its story. It was just interesting writing. It was interesting science fiction. And this one had a really good idea. And it's an idea that really fits in with the times. Fake news. I mean, it even says in the episode, but it just doesn't capitalize on it. We don't see any of this fake news happening.
We don't see any of why this new society is so bad and why it needs to be changed. Besides the obvious, they're taking away our history. Like, yes, we agree that this is bad, but it comes across more as somebody just saying, we should get rid of the monks because the monks are telling us what to do and we don't like telling us what to do.
When really it should be the monks are killing us, they're using us for our resources, or anything at all. Like, even if you just rip off 1984, which obviously this episode took inspiration from.
I mean, even if we did go with the monks are killing us and taking our resources and forcing us to do stuff, you could easily do a rip-off of the Dalek invasion of Earth. And I mean, like, yes, it's a familiar story, but
these are all very familiar stories, I guess.
Something that Nick Briggs once said was that you can use a familiar story to tell something interesting with the characters. Like, one of our favourite Doctor Who stories, the two-parted Lucy Miller and To the Death, is...
It's basically the Dalek invasion of Earth.
It's a redo of Dalek invasion of Earth, and we're not just saying that as a form of criticism. It is explicitly, it is Daleks invading the Earth and using the exact same strategy 30 years after they did it last time. But the monk and the meddling monk is helping them out. It's exactly the same story, but they use this same setup to tell an interesting story with the new characters and do something interesting with this premise, which is what they could have done with the monks, but they didn't.
I mean, we've even got, like, later on, I'm jumping ahead. Later on, we've got the genesis of the Cybermen. It's an idea that's been done to death, not just the Cybermen, but the Daleks as well. But you've got a very familiar idea, but it does it differently enough to make us interested. It makes us care for the characters. And in the end, it ends up being a really solid episode.
Because it ties it into the characters more so than let's just do the story again.
But there feels like there's a threat in that episode.
I love...
You know the danger of what will happen if the Cybermen catch us.
To go on to a bit of a tangent, I love Classic Who. I haven't seen all of it, but I have seen all of the Hartnell era, with the exception of Marco Polo, but I'll watch that at some point. One of the problems I have with the Hartnell era is the fact that so many episodes use the same... so many stories use the same setup. It is the Doctor and companions land on a planet and they meet a group of rebels who are being oppressed by an authority figure and have to help them rebel and take back their place and take back their world or their society, whatever. And they use this over and over again, which is a problem, but they use it. What makes it acceptable, what makes it worth watching is the fact that each of them does something different with the characters. I mean, even the Space Museum, which, it starts with a really interesting first episode and then quickly turns into one of those. It's worth watching because it plays out like a parody of that concept. I mean, because the only reason the rebellion started is because Vicky got bored and told people, hey, shall we just start a rebellion? So they just steal their enemies' weapons and take the planet back. It's hilarious.
But even then, every time the villain does feel different, I say.
Yes.
You do realise what you're up against.
Yeah.
The Daleks, you know what's up with the Daleks. They're the space Nazis. They'll kill everything. In the Space Museum, they're just like a bunch of stuffy old gits, really.
Basically, yes.
There's plenty of things you could be doing. These villains are doing bad things, but with the monks, you're kind of just left. Everything is implied. You don't see what the monks are really doing.
The Dalek invasion of Earth. It is one of these. They land on a planet and have to help a group of rebels take out an oppressive authority. It was absolutely not the first story to do it, but it's considered one of the best stories in the history of the show because it does something different with the concept and because it uses the concept to explore how the characters react to this scenario and react to this world, and it has good writing and good character development, and it's a really, really good story.
And it has stakes. Again, off the top of my head from having watched that episode in a while, I can tell you the Daleks, they sent a plague to destroy the humans. They bombarded it with meteors. They destroyed major cities. They dug out the entire county of Bedfordshire to put a bomb into the core of the Earth. What have the monks done? Why are we fighting the monks? What are the stakes here? Why do we need to do this? Okay, I'm with the characters, but why am I with these characters?
The episode fails to explain
What is the conflict here?
And the thing is, it doesn't exactly fail to explain it, but it fails to explain why we should care about the conflict, because all we get about what the conflict is some pat, they've got concentration camps. That's it. We don't know why they have concentration camps. We don't know why people go there. We don't know why they need it. We don't know anything about this. We just know they have the most basic iconography that people understand from fascist movements, and that's enough to make people hate them. And yes, it kind of works, because hearing concentration camps instantly makes you want to see these villains die.
But it's just kind of expected, isn't it?
If you put any kind of thought into it, and we put way too much thought into it, it completely falls apart, because we don't see anything besides this most basic of concepts.
And especially considering because it's such a relevant concept nowadays. You know, you can't go 5 minutes these days without hearing the words fake news. And the way it's portrayed here is more in the sense of the monks are just kind of taking credit for like all of humanity's greatest achievements. You know, again, the light bulb, landing on the moon, the Monk Elisa. And then in real life, fake news isn't being used by people to gain superficial power. You know, these are people who are already in power.
And are trying to use fake news to consolidate their power and build up this power base so that
fake news could turn into a real threat in real life, where we're left believing that people who aren't our enemies could really be our enemies, so we have to rise up. It's propaganda.
And the idea of fake news is, at its core, anybody who doesn't agree with you is an enemy. And, you know, the concept of fake news, it tells you that you're already right, and anybody who disagrees with you is just brainwashed by the fake news media who are desperate to discredit us in any way. It's a very dangerous concept because it encourages people to not think critically about their views.
And it just encourages more and more paranoia. But we don't really get that here.
All we get is they're saying they did some things that they didn't, but they already have power. They already have total power. They don't need this.
And I think
the monks in this episode are not only contradictory to because in this they're incompetent as opposed to omnipotent, as we said last time. They're not only contradictory to what they've been shown in the previous episodes, they contradict themselves within the same episode, because they do these things that they don't seem to need to, but they constantly tell us that they need to do it, but they don't explain why.
And I've just realised, out of the two big political commentary episodes, a few out of the few relevant episodes from this season, we've had like the fake news story in this one, and the emoji episode handled the idea of emojis a lot better than the fake news handles fake news episodes.
Yeah, and this is emojis, which are a very superficial and pretty irrelevant way of
people completely dump on Smile just because of the word emoji, and you know, I kind of get that knee-jerk reaction because you see in the same year we had the Emoji Movie come out, which was very clearly just this vapid way of trying to capitalise on this thing that Gen Xers have on their smartphones and use all the time.
But Smile looked at the concept of emojis and said, okay, this is, these are people who think that often they either struggle to get emotions down through words, or it's simply easier and more understandable to do it through this smiley face picture. What if we took that into the future and actually built more of a society based around that? How would that work? Whereas this is just, fake news is a thing.
Yeah. That's basically it.
He doesn't explore anything.
It just holds it up to our face and says, this is a thing. Even the Zygon two-parter in Series 9, while it didn't do a whole lot with the concept of, radical extremism, it at least provided something.
I saw...
Not much, but it was something. Yeah.
I saw the movie Ready Player One recently, and I swear this is relevant. It touts itself as a celebration of pop culture, and it's a decent enough movie, but it doesn't explore why pop culture resonates with people. It uses all these characters, but it doesn't explain why these characters are so popular and why they're stuck in the popular consciousness. It just shoves these pop culture characters into your faces and say, "Hey, you liked this thing, therefore you should like this thing that reminds you that this thing exists." And this is all the episode. This is all the Lie of the Land does with the concept of the fake news idea.
It just throws it in our faces and doesn't do anything with it.
This episode sucks.
This episode sucks. So what's next?
After the 3 hours we spent of your time ranting about the same things over and over again and screaming this episode sucks in increasingly large volumes over and over again, I think that's all we've got to say about this episode, unless you've got anything to add.
No, I'm out of constructive criticism for now.
I think we ran out of constructive criticism after about 2 minutes.
I think it ended after my name is Charlie and my name is Russell.
Yeah, after that, you can just ignore everything after that. Congratulations on all your time wasted. You must be new here.
This episode sucks!
Yes, it does! We will see you next week for the Emperors of Mars. Next week being a pejorative term because we have no idea what we're going to do this because we very, very, very rarely record these on time.
This episode sucks.
This episode sucks.